When you have power, people will always try to take it from you, always.
Nothing can break me down. I'm the man.
Are you even more ruthless than you used to be?
Right hand to God, first in command. My testimony, but I take the stand.
Hey, welcome back to Bandwagon fans. This is Jeff, and this is it. This is the last review of 2018. It's been a fun year. Looking forward to 2019 and closing out this year with a different kind of a movie, kind of a frustrating movie to watch at times, and that is the biopic for Dick Cheney called Vice. And here's a couple scenes from the movie.
What do you say? I want you to be my VP. I want you. You're my vice.
Well, George, I'm the CEO of a large company. And I have been Secretary of Defense. And I have been White House Chief of Staff. The Vice Presidency is a mostly symbolic job. However, if we came to a different understanding, I can handle the more mundane jobs, overseeing bureaucracy, military, energy, and foreign policy.
Yeah, right. I like that.
All right, so Vice. This is brought to us by Adam McKay, who also directed The Big Short, and this is shot in same kind of style as The Big Short, although even more so. There's probably going to at some point be an adjective to describe McKay, like a movie's been McKayed. And this follows Dick Cheney from his formative years. I think it starts in 1963 up until throughout the Bush Jr.'s presidency, where he was, of course, the vice president of the United States. And so before I really get into talking about the movie itself, I just wanted to read some headlines from IMDb user reviews, because it's kind of illuminating. Here's one: laughing nervously. There's a good movie buried somewhere in here. I like this one. A political biopic for meme lords. Shockingly bad Dick Cheney biopic mockumentary. Let's see. Could be great if the audience wasn't treated like idiots. People hate to be confronted with reality. A little preachy but good. Great acting, incredibly boring. Different filmmaking presentation, loved it, excellent. Bale nails it, well worth the price of admission. So what do we believe? Unique. Bale is great, movie is unabashedly poor. Vice, a snarky biopic full of creative energy for better or worse. Not up to the potential. So those headlines really do actually do a pretty good job of telling the story. First off, the high part of the movie, without a doubt, is the acting. This cast: Christian Bale as Dick Cheney, Amy Adams as his wife, Lynn Cheney, sorry. Sam Rockwell as George Bush Jr., and Steve Carell as Donald Rumsfeld. And those are the main players in the movie. Specifically, Christian Bale and Amy Adams. Just they deserve everything. If they don't win Best Actor and Best Actress, or at least Best Supporting Actress, it'll be a shame. The physical transformations that Christian Bale went through from probably a late 20s, early 30s Dick Cheney up into the unhealthy, overweight Dick Cheney of his later years, just even better than the even better than the Freddie Mercury performance in Bohemian Rhapsody. And I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the actor's name, but just as I'm watching it, I'm like, man, it looks like I'm watching Dick Cheney. Besides the physical transformation, the mannerisms, the pauses before he would say something, the little smirks he would give. I kept watching Christian Bale, and I kept picturing Jon Stewart doing that, imitating Dick Cheney, and it's like I could see Jon Stewart watching Christian Bale's performance and building his impersonation off of that. It's in a kind of a weird circular way. Just the performances were just absolutely amazing. Amy Adams as Lynn Cheney. The first scene she was in, it was a good 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes of seeing her before I realized it was Amy Adams. I actually pulled out my phone and looked it up because I was like, man, she looks familiar, but I wasn't quite sure. But she nailed it. And, there's one scene in particular where she's on the campaign trail kind of filling in for Dick Cheney. And you can see as the scene goes, her portrayed Lynn Cheney gaining confidence on stage. Like you literally see the transformation happen on stage. And it was, I've heard a ton of great things about Amy Adams acting. The couple movies I've seen her in, I was not impressed. After seeing this, I get it. She is a phenomenal actress. And again, from what I've seen this year, definitely deserves a nomination, if not a win for best supporting actress. She was great. Dick Cheney was great. Sam Rockwell, also great as George Bush. A little bit of a smaller role, and I don't think he nailed it. It wasn't a caricature. He nailed some mannerisms, and you're looking at it, believing everything they did. And I'm going to come back to that in a second, because that actually is kind of one of the problems with the movie. But anyways, the acting, absolutely phenomenal. You also see in those comments and in the titles, everybody recognizes how great the acting was. The movie they're in is problematic for some people. My reaction to it, I came out of it, actually, as I'm watching it, I was getting angry. And that's not necessarily a knock on the movie, because that's definitely the reaction Adam McKay wants people to have. But I'm kind of on the fence on how I can evaluate the movie, because it makes an incredibly strong argument, and I'm not sure if the facts back up the argument that Adam is making. So this movie kind of calls for doing some fact checking, which I'm going to be doing today and over the next week, just for my own edification. But it is very clear that Adam McKay blames Dick Cheney and his circle of political friends for much of the problems in the United States that we're facing today, and going back throughout the Iraq War and even before that. Lays a lot on Dick Cheney's feet, and if it's backed up by fact, then all the more power to Adam McKay for just like in The Big Short, he did a really great job of educating the public about something that happened that we needed to know about in terms of the housing crisis, the bubble burst in 2008. But I'm not sure. I don't personally know yet if he went too far in the claims he was making in Vice, or if it really can be backed up by history. It's definitely changed my opinion about some things. So all right. So basically, starting with Dick Cheney's appearance in the Nixon White House, where he meets Donald Rumsfeld, it kind of becomes an aide to Donald Rumsfeld. It kind of shows that there's a specific theory in politics called the unitary executive. And I got to get a little bit wonky here, because you have to understand this to understand the movie, although they do a pretty good job of explaining it. But basically, the unitary executive theory suggests that when the president does something, it is not illegal. He has absolute control over the executive branch, and as such, he literally cannot break the law. So if you remember from the Nixon-Frost debates, or at least the movie Nixon-Frost, there's the line, from Nixon saying, what I'm saying is, when I do it, it's not illegal. And that comes from this theory. Very few people actually subscribe to this. Unfortunately, the very few people that do subscribe to it are now entrenched in power, including Antonin Scalia on the Supreme Court, who makes a few appearances in this movie. And it was one of the bedrock principles of the Bush White House. So, and then there was a second theory that came out of that. And I remember hearing about this 2005, 2006 or so, where somebody had come to Dick Cheney with a loophole saying that because the vice president is in the Constitution in both the Senate and the executive branch, neither branch has oversight over the vice president. The vice president can claim executive authority when if the Senate was trying to question him, or he could claim that he's part of the Senate, so the executive branch couldn't oversee his actions. So basically meaning that he basically turned the vice president from a figurehead to the most important political position in the United States of America. And my assumption had always been, even though I was aware of these things, my assumption had always been that Dick Cheney heart was in his right place. He was a patriot, wanted the best for his country, and although there were things that he did that I disagreed with, he wasn't the character of evil that we often saw while he was vice president. After seeing this movie, I came out of it saying, fuck that motherfucker. That dude is as evil as it gets. He is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And he has left a scar on this world that may not ever be repaired. That's how I left the movie feeling. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the editing techniques that Adam McKay used to get that feeling out of me and probably many other people. And that's why I'm so on the fence. I kind of have to dial back in my emotions and really make sure that history and reality actually justify that big of a shift in me. So one of the techniques that Adam McKay used is hard cut editing from one thing to something unrelated, but because it's edited in that way, the audience relates the two things. So for example, if you saw, say, a guy walking up a driveway with a bouquet of roses in his hand, and then it immediately cuts to a woman inside of a house looking angry, you would, as an audience, we would obviously put the two together and say, the guy is bringing flowers to his wife because he's done something wrong, right? We make that connection even though they're not actually linked in the same scene together. Well, what they do in Vice is talk about, so for example, it goes back to when Cheney was in the White House talking with Donald Rumsfeld when Nixon was president. And they're talking about, it's Rumsfeld and Cheney talking about Nixon and Kissinger, Henry Kissinger, being in another office. And Rumsfeld is explaining that they're discussing beginning bombing in Cambodia. And it's showing them talking, and then immediately cuts to a scene of a village being bombed in Cambodia. And we make the association of Cheney and Rumsfeld and this bombing, even though they weren't actually related. Cheney and Rumsfeld weren't talking about bombing Cambodia, or they weren't planning to bomb Cambodia. They were talking about Nixon and Kissinger talking about bombing Cambodia. But now the point of that particular scene was to show how much power existed in the White House, how two people could get together and decide to just kill hundreds of thousands of people on the other side of the world. So he wasn't, in that particular scene, he wasn't trying to suggest that Cheney and Rumsfeld were responsible for Cambodia, but that's the kind of editing that was being used. And then later on, it continued that kind of editing. So, for example, Dick Cheney, there was a comment about Dick Cheney rolling back environmental protections, and then it cuts to a scene of a wildfire, probably in California. So we make the association of Dick Cheney causes California wildfires. And you could make that argument, but there's a lot of steps you have to fill in. You can't just go, Dick Cheney cuts EPA funding, California wildfires. There is an argument to be made there, but it's not a clear A to B through line. So in that respect, I think the movie, and that's probably why you're getting a lot of those comments about, a boring movie or treating the audience like idiots, because it's using techniques to extract an emotional response that it may or may not actually be supporting. And so I just got mixed feelings about how the movie was edited. Was it effective? Absolutely. As a piece of film trying to get the audience to react a certain way, it was clearly effective. I'm not sure if it was fair or not. So I still got to look back at that. But overall, Vice, the acting performances, just some of the best I've ever seen. Again, Christian Bale, like as I'm talking, I'm playing back scenes of watching Christian Bale talk, and it was just, I can't believe what an amazing actor he is. And then Amy Adams, Steve Carell, all of them, Sam Rockwell, all of them deserve nominations. So it's worth. So this movie made an honorable mention for my best of 2018. It's worth going to see. At least wait for Netflix. Every American should watch this movie. It is. You may not agree with everything in it. You may not agree with anything in it. You may come away from this movie saying that Adam McKay is a big fat liar and just manipulating the audience. That all well may be true. But every American owes it to themselves to watch this movie, form your own opinion, and at least understand how the levers of power are being moved in this country. Because whether you know what's going on or not, our politicians are making decisions that affect us. If nothing else, this movie was good at showing how those decisions get made. So a couple people asked me what I thought of the movie. Did I like it? Was it entertaining? No, I didn't like it. It wasn't entertaining, but that's not the point. This isn't Aquaman. This isn't a cartoon with a spider pig. This is a movie about power in the United States of America. It's not pretty, it's not pleasant, but it is important whether you agree with it or not. So I recommend watching it. However, understanding you may walk away from it absolutely hating the movie and disagree with everything that it said. So, but anyways, go watch it, and that's it. This is 2018. This is my last video, my last review for 2018. It's been a great year. Looking forward to 2019. Looking forward to debuting the new introduction I edited. And just looking forward to getting better every day. I'm not a natural on camera. I'm no Christian Bale, that's for sure. But I say way too often. But I'm just trying to get better every day and trying to develop my analytical skills and my camera presence, my editing, and really appreciate everybody watching. So that's it. The last time for 2018. This is Jeff. Get on the bandwagon.